What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So President Trump did something yesterday that I was pretty shocked. I was actually doing a live stream. So by the way, I'm going to start doing more live streams. So make sure you guys tune in, subscribe to the channel. Then you'll get notified when I do the live streams. And then as well, I'm going to start doing members only live streams. So if you're not a member, you might want to do that because we're going to be doing members only live stream. And we'll be doing more in-depth conversations about the current situation with the midterm elections and the different polls and all that stuff. And I also, in the future, I want to get into more of like focus group kind of setup. And so have members participate in a focus group where I'm asking you guys a series of questions and then getting a response and then moving forward and doing some videos on that in the future. Okay, so I said all that, but what we really want to focus on today is the Senate race. So the Senate race in Texas just changed. President Trump actually came out and he endorsed Paxton. Now, this is interesting because I didn't think we would see this. I really didn't. And obviously he waited just a week before the election to make this announcement, but he did make the announcement. And so this will mean that Paxton will most likely win this runoff next week. And we'll be covering that live too, so make sure you tune in. But what's interesting about this is President Trump waited all of this time. If President Trump early on, when they just announced, so March 3rd, remember that was the primary, and then they knew that they were going to a runoff. At that point, if President Trump came out and endorsed Paxton, that would have been different. And Paxton probably would have been able to save a lot of money, and we could have even seen Cornyn just drop out at that point. But now we're in a situation where President Trump waited all of this time, and so all of this money's been spent. You have Paxton going against Cornyn going against Paxton, all this, baggage coming up and all these different ads and all of this. And it didn't need to be that way because President Trump went ahead and endorsed Paxton. Now, for a time, we thought that President Trump was going to endorse Cornyn. And there was even talk, and I was even talking about that on this channel, where Paxton might decide to drop out because he wasn't going to get the endorsement, or at the time it was felt that Paxton wasn't going to get the endorsement. But guess what? Paxton gets the endorsement. And so now we're probably looking at Paxton versus Tallarico. And so what does that mean? We're going to take a look at some polling after we watch this clip, and we'll talk a little bit about this. We'll pull up the Senate map. And on the Senate map, I'll show you why Texas is a crucial state. If Democrats can win in Texas, that changes the ball game. Democrats will probably be able to take back control of the Senate if we see something like that. So that's what we're going to focus on in this video. But first off, you guys can do me a favor. Please like the video. And if you're watching this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to play the clip first, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. I'll show you the polling, and then we'll go to the Senate map, and I'll show you Texas and why the Texas Senate seat could be the seat that puts Democrats over the top. Okay, let's play the clip first, and then we'll talk about it. Here we go.
Happened, and then came the Truth Social post.
Yeah, it really happened. It really happened. And I can't think of an endorsement in Republican politics that has ever been as important as Donald John Trump's endorsement. And you see it in Texas. You saw, obviously, in Kentucky earlier tonight. You saw it in Louisiana over the weekend. And you see it in the Texas polling as well. Because just take a look here. Impact of Trump's endorsement, Texas Senate, among Republicans. Look at what you see here. 55% of Republicans say that you would be more likely to vote for the candidate Donald Trump endorses. You see 36% say no impact. Look at this, though. Just 9% say less likely to vote for the candidate that Trump endorses. But overall here, it's just very clear. If you get Trump's endorsement, as Ken Paxton has, then all of a sudden what we should expect to see is Republican voters lining up behind Ken Paxton, which of course is what we've seen in basically every single other contest, including obviously in Kentucky earlier this evening.
But with Lisa Murkowski's comment there, she said, how does it help the president if we end up losing Texas? It's because there's a real question about how Ken Paxton would fare against James Tallarico, the Democrat, come November.
Yeah, okay. So I think it's so important to know that you have one world, one galaxy in which you have the Republican primary electorate, and then you have completely other galaxy, which is the general electorate. And the polling here really tells the story, right? Because even before the endorsement, what you essentially saw here was a very close race, but one in which Ken Paxton was actually favored to win in the runoff over John Cornyn, obviously the incumbent. Paxton was ahead 48% to 45%. Based upon slide number 1, of course, I expect that Paxton's lead is going to climb ever higher. So you see these numbers right here. But then look towards the general election, because it is a completely different world. Because you can see it right here. Okay, choice for Texas Senate. You got Tallarico here at 44%. And then look at here, Ken Paxton, a Republican in Texas. The best he can do at this point is averaging 40% of the vote. I mean, I was looking at all the polling I could find. This is the best that a Democrat for Senate has been polling since like 2002. That is a very long time ago. When you have to go all the way back since I was in middle school, you know that the Democrat in this particular case is polling well in Texas.
And so that poll, that last poll that he showed there, that was actually an aggregate of polls. So they were averaging the polls, but showing Tallarico at 44% and Paxton at 40%. And looking at some of the latest polling, and we'll get to that. Let's go over to that right now. Looking at some of the latest polling. Now, this was, I think the latest one that we saw, this came out before the announcement from President Trump. It was on, I believe it was on the 18th. Let's get all the way down here. Okay, yeah, so it was on the 18th. So that was before the announcement. And so what's interesting here is if we look and we have, let's look at Cornyn first. Now, these are individual polls, okay? So this isn't an aggregate of polls, it's just individuals. So if we're looking at Tallarico, first off, if we look at the average, and we're looking at Cornyn first, because I just want to show you the difference here. So if we're looking at the average of the last three polls here, you have Tallarico at 42.7%. You have Cornyn at 39.7%. Okay, so you see Tallarico has an advantage here when we're looking at the last three polls. If we look at the individual polls, Texas Southern University, this was conducted on 5/18/2026. 1,223 likely voters, margin of error plus or minus 2.8%. So that's a good margin of error. This is a good sample size, likely voter. So this poll is good. This poll has what we like to see in a poll. Tallarico at 44%, Cornyn at 45%. Okay, looking at the University of Texas, this was conducted on 4/29/2026. 1,200 registered voters, and the margin of error there was plus or minus 3.4%. I like to see a margin of error of 3% or less, so it's a little bit higher than that. This is also registered voters, not likely voters. Likely voters are voters who voted in recent elections. Registered voters are just people who registered to vote. They might not have voted in the last 10 years, but they're registered to vote. The sample size here is good, 1,200. Now, Tallarico at 40%. Cornyn, look at that, 33%. And this is what changed skewed this average of the polls here. But 33% for Cornyn. And then I didn't do the other at the top, but the other here is 27%. Okay, so those are people who are unsure right now. And right above that, the Texas Southern University, that was 11% other. Okay, so there's still some room to work with over here with this 11% for both candidates. Now, if we go down to Texas Public Opinion Research, conducted on 4/28/2026, 1,865 likely voters, margin of error there, plus or minus 2.5%. So the margin of error is good. We're looking at likely voters here, and we have a very good sample size at 1,800. Now, Tallarico at 44%, Cornyn at 41%, and then other at 15%. Okay, so these all pretty much fall within the margin of error. Yeah, they pretty much all do, except for this one, of course. This one doesn't fall. So the University of Texas, that's outside of the margin of error, but the others are within the margin of error, which means that it's still considered a toss-up if you're looking at these different polls. Now, that was Cornyn. Now, Cornyn is not expected to win now. It looks like Paxton will most likely win. At least at this point, Paxton is the favorite. But let's look at the polling. So when we look at the average of the polls, the last three polls here, Tallarico, 44.3%. Paxton, 40%. Okay, so when you saw them talking about this on CNN, Harry Enton, he was talking about the average. It said Enton's aggregate, but realistically, he probably got that aggregate from here, the last three polls. And let's look at the polls individually. You have the Texas Southern University poll conducted on 5/18/2026. Once again, 1,223 likely voters. Margin of error there, plus or minus 2.8%. You have Tallarico at 45%, Paxton at 45%, other at 10%. Okay, so they're There's some room to work with for both candidates. You have that 10% of other, but right now it's showing a dead heat. Okay, now there is a margin of error there, so one candidate could be much higher than the other. We don't know, but this is what they're showing us here. University of Texas. This was conducted on 4/29/2026, 1,200 registered voters. Margin of error there, plus or minus 3.4%. You have Tallarico at 42. You have Paxton at 34. You have other at 24%. Okay, so you see there's another large margin, large gap there. Looking at the Texas Public Opinion Research conducted on 5/28/2026, you have 1,865 likely voters. Margin of error there is plus or minus 2.5%. You have Tallarico at 46%. You have Paxton at 41%. Then you have other at 13%. So looking at the margin of error here, what is it? The highest it could be is, let's say, Paxton was at 40, what's the math there? 43.5, so 43.5. If we were showing him up high, and then we would see Tallarico down to, and so Tallarico would be right at that margin of error. But nonetheless, you want to be in Tallarico's camp. You want to be at that 46% if we're just looking at one poll here. But that is a good poll, good sample size. Everything is good there. Margin of error, likely voters, all of that is good. And then, as we stated, you have that 13% there. So that's what they would be realistically fighting for, to try to get that 13%. And who is the 13%? Are they independent voters? Are they people that are just not sure if they're going to even participate in voting? We don't know exactly who they are. But when you're looking at both candidates, both Paxton and Cornyn, side by side with Tallarico, you see Tallarico has a real shot of winning because he is right up there. And in some polls, he's actually leading. He's never, we're not looking at a Tallarico at a 34% or a Tallarico at a 33% to Cornyn or to Paxton. We're looking at Tallarico always on top or always at the top, and the other candidates are lower than him. And so that's something worth mentioning here. And so we'll have to see how things play out. We're going to be coming back. We'll do that live stream. We'll take a look at the runoff. We'll see if Paxton does seal the deal there. And then from that point on, we're going to see how the polling goes. Because remember, Paxton had a lot of baggage, or has a lot of baggage. And we'll have to see if that really impacts him. So you have Paxton with a lot of baggage running against a Democrat that's a pastor that doesn't, at this point, we haven't seen much stuff come out about Tallarico. And so Democrats clearly have a shot. They clearly have a shot to win in Texas. And it just got better. Murkowski was right when it comes down to it. You have President Trump waiting until a week before the runoff and then chiming in and saying, yes, I'm going to endorse Paxton. And of course, the Republican senators, some Republican senators, Thune being one, Thune is the majority leader in the Senate, he doesn't like this because he wanted Cornyn to win. They were putting money into Cornyn's race to help him because they wanted him to defeat Paxton because they know Paxton is more problematic than Cornyn, and Cornyn is the incumbent. And so if Cornyn doesn't win as the incumbent, now the seat it's an open seat. Okay, now you have Paxton running against Tallarico for an open seat, essentially. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at our map here. And the reason, if we're looking at Texas, first off, if we're looking at some of the different states, and I have this kind of, the way that I have this set up is I'm looking at the different kind of tiers, okay? So the first thing the Democrats need to do, Democrats and independents right now, 47, Republicans at 53. What Democrats need to do is they need to defend 3 seats. They need to defend Georgia, they need to defend Michigan, and they also need to defend New Hampshire. If they can defend those seats, then they need to net 4 seats. Okay, their best pickups right now, North Carolina, Maine, and Alaska. Those are their best pickups, the best opportunities that they have right now. And I think the best flip for them, or I don't want to say the easiest flip, but the likely flip for them is going to be in North Carolina and Maine. Now, the race in Alaska is going to be very, very close. But I think they have an opportunity to win in Alaska. And so I would say Alaska next. So these 3 states, I think Democrats have a real shot at flipping. Now, they need to win one more state. Because if we look at the numbers here, you have Democrats and independents at 50, you have Republicans at 50. What does that mean? That means Republicans still maintain control of the Senate because the vice president comes in and breaks the tie. So Democrats need one more win in order to get to 51 and take back control of the Senate. So what do we have left? We have Ohio, we have Iowa, we have Texas, we have Nebraska. If Osborne wins in Nebraska, that changes the numbers. That would take a seat away from Republicans. And so this is what we're looking at right now. We could even potentially see something happen in Montana. We could see the independent win there and shift things. But when it comes down to it, now Texas really comes into play. Texas comes into play because now you have, I mean, I'm saying this already. We don't know what's going to happen. Okay, so let me just wait and back up. When it comes to Paxton and Cornyn, we don't know. Cornyn might still be able to pull it out. But if we look at recent history, what did we see in Indiana? We saw state senators, the majority of state senators, lose in Indiana. What did we see in Louisiana? We saw Senator Cassidy lose in a primary. He was primaried. What did we see just yesterday in Kentucky? We saw Thomas Massie lose his congressional seat. And so these are people that Trump went against, okay? And you can realistically say if President Trump is endorsing Paxton, he's going against Cornyn. Okay, he's not endorsing Cornyn because he doesn't like Cornyn. And so if he's endorsing Paxton, Paxton is probably going to win because President Trump endorsed these other candidates and they beat the incumbent. They won. Okay, so in a situation with Texas, if Democrats can pull it out, if Tallarico can win in Texas, that gives them the 51 that they need. Now, 51, that gives the Democrats the majority, but that doesn't end things. Democrats still have a chance to win 2 more states. Because if we're looking at Iowa and we're looking at Ohio, Democrats have an opportunity to win in both of those states. I think their best chance is going to be in Ohio. I think Sherrod Brown has a real shot of winning. And if we're looking at the momentum in November, okay, because remember, all the stuff that we're looking at today, this is polling that's going on today. And this is if we had an election today, this is the way it would look. But if we see momentum like this, if we see Democrats winning in North Carolina, winning in Maine, winning in Alaska, potentially winning in Texas, guess what? Some of these other states like Ohio and Iowa, we could see a flip there. And so we could potentially see a flip in Ohio. We could see Sherrod Brown win in Ohio. And Sherrod Brown, remember, he was a senator in Ohio before. Now, he lost in 2024 and he's running again, but he was a senator. And so he knows what it takes to win in Ohio. So this is, I mean, we could actually see a map that looks like this, where you have Democrats and independents at 52, Republicans at 48. That's a very real possibility. Now, when it comes to Iowa, we don't have enough information coming out of Iowa yet. I'm not, at this point, I don't know where this race is going to go. We're going to have to see who is going to be the candidate running against the Republican. It's most likely going to be Henson that's running. So once we find out who the Democratic candidate is running against Henson, then we'll have a better idea of where that race is going. But right now, I mean, this is if Democrats do everything right, okay, if they do everything right in November, and if the polling is the same or worse for Republicans, this is what we could potentially see. And remember, 6 months ago, Texas wasn't even really being talked about. But now we're talking about Texas. Actually, there's a possibility that it can flip just because of what we've been seeing on the Republican side with the 2 candidates. They're just not popular. Even if there's a scenario where Cornyn wins, Cornyn still, he's not liked. And that's why he's in a runoff right now against Paxton. Voters in Texas just do not like Cornyn. And that's why they're voting for Paxton right now. That's why Paxton is getting a lot of support. And so now I want to pass it off to you. What do you think is going to happen in Texas? Do you think Paxton will beat Cornyn in the runoff next week? Let me know in the comments below. And then also, what do you think we're going to see in November? What do you think the general election is going to look like? Do you think Tallarico has a real shot at winning in Texas? Let me know that down below as well. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye. So that's all we have for this video. Make sure if you guys want to send me an email, you can do that, david@thetecshow.com. like the video, subscribe for more, and check out these videos over here for some more great content. Talk to you later. Bye.